Hi, this is Jonah Nelson with Family Tree Nursery, and today we're going to be talking all about chrysanthemums, also known as mums. Now, mums are a huge category of plants that we grow. We grow about 65,000 mums here in Kansas City, and those are started from a cutting. When you think of the plant, a mum, this plant in front of us only grows from one cutting, where the larger mums actually grow from 5 cuttings. So we start 65,000 little cuttings at our farms here in Kansas City. Our growers do a fantastic job to get these primed and ready for the retail stores that you can take them home and plant them in your gardens, in your flower pots, and add beauty to your landscape. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history, the cultivation, the proper placement, and things that you can do to succeed in growing mums in your yard. Now, the history is for Family Tree, we started growing mums back in the early 70s. It's been nearly 60 years of growing mums, and these mums have changed over the course of time. Originally, we were growing mums when my grandfather started as a cut flower. These were taller varieties of mums with daisy-like flowers that weren't hardy, that you wouldn't plant in a landscape, but you would harvest the flowers and cut them and use them in bouquets or arrangements. And this is where mums worldwide really gained their original popularity and notoriety, because mums were being used traditionally as a cut flower. Now, they're native to Eastern Europe and Eastern Asia, and so these types of things, those environments that they grow in, weren't originally conducive to being hardy mums that you'd plant in your landscape. So now today we do have varieties that are hardy that you can grow in your landscape, where there's other varieties that you'll see at florist shops that are not hardy varieties, but they're varieties that grow really tall stems for using as cut flowers. So the cultivation of mums for us, we start them from a small cutting. A cutting, when we get them in, starts looking like about something like this, where you just have the little tip of a plant with very few leaves on it, and we stick it into a soilless media, and then we root it and we grow it for several weeks until it develops a root system under mist, where we mist them with our booms in order to get them to develop a good, healthy root system. Then several weeks later, we transplant them into their appropriate size container to get those things off to the right start. And then we continually feed them with proper nutrition to get them to where you see them today. The mums that we sell and grow are all hardy mums. These mums are hardy down to freezing temperatures and well below that, but they do require proper placement. And so knowing where to place them in your yard or your landscape is really important for having them become a perennial that can come back every year in your yard. Now, these mums that we sell and that we grow, they'll grow naturally anywhere from 18 inches all the way up to 30 inches depending on the variety. And we do grow a lot of varieties. But having the proper care, you can actually manage and grow the mum to the height that you desire based upon how you care for it. When we plant our mums at that original cutting stage and it's grown up to that plug size, we'll actually pinch the top of it. And when we make that break or that pinch on a mum at transplant, what that does is it initiates more bud break. And so you actually get 2 stems that develop off of that pinched portion of the mum plug. Once the mum is then growing in its container, there is an additional pinching that you can do in order to initiate more branching. And over the course of time, those buds just continue to double and grow into size, which we create these really rounded globe-shaped mums. But this is not naturally occurring in the landscape. Although the varieties today do grow more mounded naturally without pinching, when you pinch them, they grow more of that muffin shape and more of that rounded globe shape that's very desirable. When you're planting mums in your landscape, you just need to know and be aware that they can get 18 to 24 inches if you do proper pinching. And that proper pinching really should happen about twice a year. And you can pinch them sometime in May as they're planted and they're coming back from their winter dormancy. And then you can pinch them again sometime in late June or early July. And that would be the final pinching. And then let them grow and mature from there so that they can initiate their bud set so that they'll bloom with the natural season. The mums that we're growing at our production farm, there's 2 kind of different categories that we grade them into. We have our forced mums, and then we have our natural season mums. The forced mums we actually grow in about 1/2 acre, and that's a system that we've used over many years where we actually black cloth or shade and create longer nighttime, which creates a longer photo period for the mums to initiate that budding and blooming process. Mums are sensitive to that, and they have to have equal days and equal nights in order to start this initiation process of setting the buds on the plant. If they don't have that, then they will continue to grow vegetatively until the day length changes and the nighttime temperature starts to drop down. So that generally will happen in Kansas City area in the Midwest, you'll see that to begin to happen sometime in August naturally, or in September, depending on the variety of mum that you've chosen. So with our mums, we do want early blooming, and so we force them by pulling that whole shade cloth curtain system over top of the mums and forcing them to bloom 2 to 3 weeks earlier than they naturally would on their own. The rest of the mums that we grow, about 5 acres worth, are all grown natural season, which means they'll bloom on their own time as a natural day length in the area changes. Now, with that being known, that there's different ways you can get a mum to bloom and there's different bloom times, there are just natural season early, middle, and late blooming varieties. And so you can have mums blooming anywhere from the beginning of September all the way through up into November. But there's not one mum variety that will bloom on its own for that long. Traditionally, mums will bloom anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how they're cared for. And so you can plant mums early with early varieties, you can plant middle varieties and late varieties and get a continuous color wave of mums blooming in your landscape if you're planting early, middle, and late blooming varieties. But one variety in and of itself will only bloom at its designated time based on if it's an early, middle, and late blooming variety. Now, mums that are grown in the ground and they're growing natural season as a perennial need to be planted knowing, again, the height and the width, 18 to 24 inches, and then in a full sunlight area. The full sun is really important for mums in order to get the full bloom across the plant. In partial shade or in areas where they get 6 hours or less of sun, there'll be diminished blooms and there'll be a more weakly stemmed plant. The full sun, 6 hours or more of sun, will make a plant more robust, thicker stemmed, and more dense, which will also help hold more blooms on the plant. Those blooms will continue to open throughout the course of their blooming period as long as they've got that full sun. Now, a lot of mums, I'd say the majority of mums that we produce and that we sell, don't ever get planted in the landscape as a hardy mum, but they get planted into containers. And so when you plant a mum into a container, it actually eliminates its ability to be a perennial at that point. It becomes an annual flower that you use seasonally to enhance your front door, your back patio, and to add color. And so those mums, if you want them to be perennial, really need to be planted when they're green and when they're not blooming. It's the best time to get things rooted and established. If the mum's already in full bloom, it's not going to put as much energy towards its rooting and its development of becoming established in the landscape. If it's already in full bloom, you want to enjoy that mum, but if you can plant it, it's not going to be as hardy per se as if you plant it when they're green. That green planted mum is going to develop a bigger root system. So traditionally, you can start to come in and find mums in our stores in the middle of August, and that's as early as we start getting them in. You can plant them and create a really nice perennial plant by planting them early in August and early September. With mums, the bloom time early, middle, and late, you can use those as decorating too. With your front porch, you can start something early, and you can sometimes even skip the middle and just go to a late blooming variety so that you have continuous bloom throughout the course of the season. Now, the types of mums that we grow that are hardy mums, these are cushion mums. The cushion mums that we grow have a double flower essentially, where in a single flowered mum or a daisy type mum has a center of the flower that you'll see. In the cushion mums, they actually have the center of the flower is completely covered with petals. And so you can't see down into the center of that flower like you would on a daisy mum. On a cushion mum, the blooms are a little bit smaller because each individual petal is a little bit smaller than on a daisy mum, but there are far more flowers, far more petals on the cushion mum than there would be on a daisy mum. The cushion mums will actually cover the entire center, and it gives this really nice plump rounded bloom, where on a daisy mum, it sits really flat and looks really open, and it looks just like a daisy would look like. And so these cushion mums are more desirable because they add more color and because of the density of the flower and the amount of flowers that are produced on one plant. The cushion mums are by far the most popular out of the groups that we sell. Although we do have some daisy mums, the cushion mums are far and away the most popular and work really, really well. When you're planting mums as a perennial in a landscape, there's a couple things you want to consider. Number one, you want to make sure that you've got the space for it, knowing that they can get 18 to 24 inches tall if they're pinched and trimmed properly. They also need to make sure that they've got 6 hours at minimum of full sun. You want to dig a hole twice as wide as the root mass and then incorporate compost into the hole as you're planting it so that it has good nutrition and good loose soil so that it can develop a nice root system. As you're planting the mum, for the first several weeks, you will have to water more frequently than once it's established. When you plant it in the landscape, it's going to require watering at least 3 times a week when it's early in the season, and it could require more than that if our temperatures are over 90 degrees. Beyond that, you want to slowly wean the plant off of needing water, but the sequential years are really when that will happen. So make sure that you keep your mums watered even as they start to go dormant in the wintertime. Now, after we get a couple hard freezes, they will turn brown, the blooms will shatter, and the plant will go dormant if it's planted in the landscape. At that point, the mum is going dormant and storing its energy for next year. So giving it a good watering, even at that stage, is ideal, and it's a good idea to do that going into the freezing temperatures. All winter long, that mum will be there dormant, and you can leave the stems up. You don't need to cut the foliage off, but in the springtime, cut that foliage off, and you'll watch it come back from the base as a perennial plant, which is what makes mums so desirable in the landscape, is that they're so durable. They can go down to negative temperatures and be very hardy in the Kansas City area. Besides that, the overwintering of mums is really easy, but it will not work in containers. And so don't count on mums being perennials that you can use in your containers, but do count on them adding a lot of beauty to your landscape and to your home or your front porch. We get new varieties of mums in every year. You can actually check us out on familytreenursery.com, click on our perennial tab, and you'll see all the varieties of mums that we carry. And each year we update that with the new varieties. Now, the new varieties that we carry, we're always trying to find things that are different, whether it's an earlier bloom, a more vivid color, a different color tone. There's always something new that they're coming out with. So we try those out to see how well they perform against the others. So you'll find a really large selection of mums at Family Tree. Now, the color tones that mums come in, they come in orange, yellow, red, purple, pink, and white. Those are the primary colors that they come in, but there's so many shades of all the different colors of yellows, oranges, and reds. Who knew there were so many shades of yellow? But yellow and orange are the 2 most popular colors by far of all the mums that we produce and that we sell at the stores. Conoco orange and Conoco yellow are the 2 most popular varieties out of all of the mums that we sell. And I think it's a really good option for folks because it's a mid-season bloomer. The blooms are really large on that variety and the habit is just so dense. There's actually a test that's been done where they take mums and you hold them at waist height and you drop them down to the ground when they're grown in their pot, and you see how rigid the branching is. And if the branches flop on them, it's a mum that's normally less desirable for container culture, where the Conocos, once they're dropped from the waist height, they are like a brick. They hold their branching upright, they're so strong, and they just hold their color and they hold their branching and their blooms very, very well. So the Conocos are a series you should check out. If you've never done mums before, I think you'll really like the Conoco series. Now, with all of our mum varieties that come into the stores, there's so many options to choose from. We sell a lot of the mums when they're green. So all of our signs have pictures on them. The website has pictures of all the colors, so you can start to plan what you want to grow in your garden or on your front porch. Remember that when you're planting mums in the garden or in the ground, they will bloom about 4 to 6 weeks. And if you take a mum from the garden center that's already in bloom about 50% of the way open, you can put that in a shaded environment, but some of those buds that are on the interior may not open up all the way, but 50% will continue to open up as the season progresses. And so you can have mums, even if you have shade, if you've got containers or a front porch or a back deck, and you want to enjoy the beauty of the plant. They're a really fun plant that enhances the landscape, enhances your front door, and you can use them to just change out the season, anywhere from middle of August all the way through into November. So come and check us out at Family Tree Nursery. You can check us out in Overland Park, in Shawnee, and Liberty. Don't forget to check us out at familytreenursery.com. Click on our perennial tab and you can learn all about mums. We've got a care sheet there, as well as all the varieties. And please come into the stores to see us at any one of our 3 locations in Kansas City.